3 days before my wedding, I find out that my fiancé, Carlton, has changed the wedding venue from my grandfather's home, that's located up in the south, to Jonah Jennings, her childhood friend's favorite castle in Staravia. When I'm about to confront her, I overhear her complaining to her friend, "Thank goodness John's a man with taste. Otherwise, everyone's going to make fun of me for the rest of my life." Her friend asks, "Didn't you agree that you'd hold the wedding ceremony in Theo's grandpa's house? Aren't you worried that he might not marry you out of fury when he finds out?" Ivy chortles in response. "The Sterlings are on the verge of bankruptcy. Marrying me is Theo's only ticket out of poverty. He can't risk losing me at all. I've already arranged for the wedding planner to call him and inform him about the change. He's most likely rushing to change his flight." Rage and resentment swell in my heart. I clench my fists tightly, but in the end, I turn on my heel and leave. 3 days later, the wedding is held in the castle, just as Ivy has planned. I never changed my flight, nor did I show up at the castle. Instead, I choose to exchange rings with another woman in my grandpa's courtyard. Till now, Ivy still doesn't understand that I want to marry her because we've been dating for 10 long years, not because I view her as a ticket out of poverty. But now that I've woken up from my dream woven of fantasies, it's time for me to make choice. Chapter 1. Not long after I left Carlton Corporation, Carlton sent me the address of a castle in Staravia, along with a photo of it. It was a cream-colored castle with limestone walls and a red and gold dome. It looked extremely opulent. And right in the center of the photo was Jonah Jennings, wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, standing tall and straight. My finger lingered on Jonah's smiling face for 2 seconds, and a wave of absurdity washed over me. I was supposed to be the groom, and this was the wedding venue Ivy had chosen for us. Yet, the star of the photo she sent me was her childhood friend whom she had always told me not to worry about. After that, Ivy went silent. I knew her well enough. She probably figured the wedding planners had already contacted me, so she just simply sent me the address, as if afraid I wouldn't know where to go when rebooking flights. There was a tight knot in my chest. I could not understand it. She had already agreed to hold the ceremony at my grandfather's home. So why did she change everything just because Jonah liked it? By the time I got home, it was already dark. I happened to overhear Ivy snapping at the housekeeper. "Theo isn't a child. Why does he have to bother me just because he got back a little late?" But Mr. Sterling received a call from the wedding planners this afternoon and left right after. I was worried he might get angry and Ivy let out a mocking laugh. "He went out to deal with visa paperwork and rebooking flights. With the Sterling family size, it's not a simple process. Relax. Theo dreams of marrying me. He'd die if he left me. Even if I booked the wedding venue on a glacier in Erendia, he'd crawl there for it, let alone a Staravian castle that John personally selected." The housekeeper said nothing more. Instead, Ivy muttered to herself, "It's already been 5 minutes, and John still hasn't replied. I should go check on him." When she rushed out of the villa, I was already gone. That villa had always belonged to the Carlton family. It was never my home. For convenience during wedding preparations, Ivy had suggested I move in. At first, we were like any other engaged couple, sweet and inseparable. Then, one day, Jonah returned to the country after a breakup. Ivy said she needed to comfort him, and that comforting lasted 4 months. Whenever Jonah was upset, she'd drop everything and run to him. I was left to handle all the wedding preparations alone. From sourcing the attire to personally designing the layout of my grandfather's courtyard, I dealt with every detail while she remained completely absent from the process. When I voiced my dissatisfaction, she didn't even look up, just tilted her head away from her screen, mid-chat with Jonah. She sighed, her voice laced with irritation. "You only want to marry me to save the Sterling family's business." Chapter 2. Ivy snapped, "I've already agreed to marry you. What are you still fussing about?" Before I could respond, she was gone, drifting out of the room with a smile to talk to Jonah on the phone. My words were left hanging in the air, losing their shape and meaning before they could even reach her. "But you were the one who proposed to me first. And I said yes because I loved you." In an instant, I had been demoted from a groom-to-be to a ghost haunting the sidelines of my own life. Even now, I had no say in choosing the wedding venue. That night, I stayed at a friend's. Ivy never bothered contacting me once. The next day, I finished my work handover and returned home, only to be met by the sound of Jonah's laughter. There have to be flower petals drifting in from both sides during the vow exchange. That's romantic. Ivy sat beside him, her eyes bright and fixed on his face in a way they hadn't been on mine. "Whatever you want," she responded. When Jonah noticed me, he waved. "Theo, come here. I've got a brilliant idea for the wedding." I caught the flash of displeasure in Ivy's eyes the moment she saw me. Why are you only getting back now? John's been busy planning the wedding for the past 4 months. On the other hand, you've done absolutely nothing. But it's just as well. John's taste is far superior. If we used your old-fashioned ideas, I would be the laughingstock of our social circle. The familiar ache of being an outsider washed over me. I'm tired, I said flatly. I'm going to rest. Ignoring her deepening scowl, I retreated to the guest room. As I closed the door, a message that I had rejected countless times before popped up again. As long as you agree, I'll give up everything and crash the wedding. Through the walls, I could still hear Jonah describing his dream wedding with castles and blooms. And again, Ivy's voice, soft and yielding. Whatever you want. It was fine. If Ivy belonged in a castle, I would head south and return home. I would let her go, setting myself free too. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the last 10 years with Ivy came flooding back. I had been her entire world, no matter who told her I wasn't good enough for her, she never wavered. She was always there, standing firmly by my side. When my grandfather was still alive, he had once patted the back of her hand and told us he hoped we would be happy. Her eyes glimmered as she nodded and said, "Grandpa, don't worry. I love Theo more than I love myself. I'll never let him suffer. I promise we'll hold the ceremony in your courtyard so you can watch us get married." It was a promise that felt as solid as stone. But I had forgotten that time and tide could erode even the hardest rock. The day before the wedding, I found a suit laid out in the living room. It was a gaudy, electric purple jacket with pants so long they dragged on the floor. On top of that, a massive, garish red flower was pinned to the lapel. Jonah greeted me eagerly. "Theo, look. I designed this for you. Vivi said you like the vintage vibe, so I studied vintage wedding styles and came up with this." Even with my heart already out the door, I still frowned when I saw the so-called wedding suit. "This looks like something worn in a circus, not a wedding." Jonah's face fell. He took a slow, dramatic step back. "I'm sorry, Theo. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just thought you'd like it. I'll destroy it right now." He grabbed a pair of scissors, aiming them at the fabric. Right on cue, Ivy rushed out of the study, snatching the blades from his grip. Chapter 3. How many times have I told you not to use scissors? What if you hurt yourself? Ivy snapped. Jonah's eyes reddened, his voice trembling. "Vivi, did I do something wrong?" Theo got so angry. Before I could explain, Ivy glared at me. "John spent 4 months preparing your suit, staying up through countless sleepless nights to coordinate with designers. And this is how you repay him? If it weren't for John, you wouldn't even have a suit for your wedding. Apologize to him." Meeting her disdainful gaze, I felt a wave of irony. When I had tried to discuss the wedding attire with her, she had told me not to bother her, she was too busy taking Jonah to Bonobo Island to clear his head. Yes, Jonah always mattered that much. When he was heartbroken, she stayed up all night to comfort him. On my birthday, she booked out an entire theater to watch a romantic movie with him. When I ran a dangerously high fever from overwork, she told me to drink more water, then turned around and drove Jonah to a private hospital to have a minor wound treated. This was my wedding. I had done everything I was supposed to do. Yet, because Jonah was involved, Ivy saw him as the sole architect of the event. Even the Carlton family had begun to view me as a useless hanger-on and look down on me. My actual suit and her wedding dress were sitting in the guest room closet. Ivy hadn't even looked at them, yet she demanded I apologize to Jonah. The more I thought about it, the colder my expression became. Ivy sneered. "You won't apologize? Then the wedding's off. Unless you apologize to John, don't even think about getting married." I loosened my clenched fists and looked at her seriously. "All right." I then headed to my room to pack my things. Rebecca Stinton had told me that the bougainvillea at Grandpa's place was in bloom. I wanted to go back as soon as possible to see it. I had planted those flowers with Grandpa before my parents took me to the city. In the living room, Ivy was comforting Jonah, though she was clearly radiating annoyance. She glanced at the guest room door and discreetly messaged her assistant, Chase Palmer. A reply came quickly. "Ms. Carlton, Mr. Sterling does have a flight change on record with Carlton Airlines. But I don't have the authority to view his latest itinerary. You'll need to check it personally." Ivy's tense expression relaxed. She typed back, "It's fine." After I finished packing, I received a message from Ivy. "If you want to marry me, you'll have to fix that temper of yours sooner or later. John only wanted to help you. Why make him upset? There's a family lunch today. I'll take John over first. The driver will pick you up later. Apologize to John then, and we can put this behind us and have the wedding tomorrow. Don't rain on everyone's parade." It was a Carlton family gathering, yet she was escorting Jonah. When the driver knocked, I took one last look at my luggage. Fine. She had proposed to me in front of everyone. Now, I would call off the engagement just as publicly. At least that way, there would be a clean ending. When I arrived at the Carlton residence, Jonah was already the center of attention. Theo, over here. As he walked toward me in his leather shoes, I noticed he had changed into a black suit, identical to the one I had prepared for myself. I gritted my teeth. Just then, Ivy came downstairs. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw him. John, you look amazing. Jonah blushed. Vivi, stop it. Theo's right here. Then, he turned to me and said, Theo, don't take it the wrong way. I feel awful about causing that fight between you and Vivi this morning. Ivy didn't take her eyes off him. The admiration in her gaze was unmistakable. She didn't even look at me, she reached out to brush a stray strand of hair from Jonah's cheek. The crowd burst into teasing laughter. Chapter 4. Standing nearby, Ivy's father, Vince Carlton, let out a heavy sigh of regret. Honestly, John is a much better match for Vivi. I glanced down at the light-colored t-shirt I was wearing. Sure, I wasn't a supermodel, but in the past, Ivy used to tell me I was the most handsome man she'd ever seen before curling up against me like a kitten. Jonah smiled graciously. Mr. Carlton, you shouldn't say things like that in front of Theo. He'll get upset. Ivy's parents scoffed. Only then did Ivy finally look at me, her face twisted with displeasure. My parents watched John grow up. Can you stop being so petty? It's such a small thing to take offense at. No wonder my mom always says upbringing is everything. You were raised by your grandfather in the countryside and only came to the city at 18. Clearly, you weren't raised properly. My brows furrowed. I couldn't believe she'd say something like that. Ivy, you know exactly how good my grandfather was to you. Don't you think your words would break his heart? A flicker of guilt flashed across her face, but with the Carlton family watching, she doubled down. Her expression darkened. John and I are just childhood friends. Don't let your male ego and jealousy make him feel bad. It was always about Jonah. I suddenly felt exhausted. The last 10 years felt like a mountain pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. After a long pause, I said, I actually came today to tell you. Jonah interrupted, his voice intentionally loud. Vivi, one of my best friends, also wants to go to Staravia for the ceremony. Are there any seats left on the flight? Ivy nodded immediately. Yes, I'll arrange it. Chase hesitated. Ms. Carlton, wasn't the last seat reserved for Mr. Sterling? Oh. Forget it then. I don't want to upset Theo. Jonah mumbled. Ivy couldn't stand seeing Jonah upset and made a decision on the spot. Theo can take another flight. John's friend doesn't know anyone else there, he should travel with us. Jonah lit up with joy and tugged at her wrist. Vivi, you're the best. The looks around me turned even more contemptuous. Ivy arranged 2 direct flights for the wedding. In the end, the groom doesn't even get a seat. So what? Theo is desperate to save the Sterling family. Forget a separate flight, he'd walk there if he had to. Mockery surrounded me. Yet, Ivy's eyes were fixed only on Jonah. She didn't hear a word I said. As always, I was just an outsider. I sighed inwardly and turned to leave, planning to bring up calling off the engagement another day. That was when I noticed the gold watch on Jonah's wrist, its design identical to the pocket watch Grandpa had left me. I exploded. Where did you get that watch? Before my fingers could even touch Jonah's wrist, Ivy shoved me. Theo, are you insane? Jonah turned deathly pale, immediately shrinking behind Ivy. Theo, I know I upset you, but we're still at the Carlton family gathering. I'll apologize first. Once lunch is over, you can yell at me or hit me however you want, okay? People around us frowned and crowded around him, their words full of comfort. Ivy's face darkened. Look at John's manners, then look at yourself. My parents just praised him once, and you lost your mind. If I actually married you, I can't imagine how much you'd humiliate this family. But at that moment, I was already burning with fury. I pointed at the watch on Jonah's wrist, clenching my teeth. I've lost my mind? He took the antique pocket watch my grandfather left me and modified it into a wristwatch. And I'm not even allowed to ask about it? Chapter 5. Ivy, you know how much that watch meant to me. It was the last piece of my grandfather I had left, aside from the Sterling family courtyard. A flicker of hesitation crossed Ivy's face at my accusation, but she quickly shook it off. You're mistaken. That isn't your grandfather's pocket watch. I'm not mistaken. It's Grandpa's. It was kept together with the gold bracelet. This is a Carlton family gathering. Stop embarrassing me and go home. I stared at her in disbelief, my eyes burning red. She panicked. For Jonah, she had disregarded my feelings countless times. But she had never seen me break like this. Now, seeing me like this, her heart sank. But just as she reached out toward me, Jonah suddenly cried out, Theo, I just thought it looked nice and asked Vivi for it. Please don't be mad at her. Ivy frowned. John, I gave it to you willingly. Why are you blaming yourself? She had defended him again. The words hit me like lightning, and my whole body began to tremble. I exclaimed, Ivy, how could you do this to Grandpa? What right do you have to give his things to Jonah? Jonah stepped forward and grabbed my wrist, shouting, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have said the gold bracelet was beautiful. Otherwise, Vivi wouldn't have melted it down to make me this watch, and then overlaid the pocket watch design on top of it. Theo, hit me if you want. You two are getting married tomorrow. You shouldn't fight. I sucked in a sharp breath, but the rage inside me refused to settle. Grandpa had left that gold bracelet for me. It was meant for his granddaughter-in-law. But it had been melted down into Jonah's watch. With every ounce of energy I could muster, I slapped Jonah. Give it back to me. A red mark instantly appeared on Jonah's face. Ivy flew into a rage and slapped me in return. You hit John because of a worthless bracelet? How could I marry a lunatic like you? Apologize to him right now, or the engagement is off. I staggered back a few steps. When I steadied myself, everyone was staring at me, everyone except Ivy, who was busy comforting Jonah. At that moment, I was crushed with regret. I never should have fallen in love with Ivy. I shouldn't have been so determined to marry her. There had been many better choices. But for the sake of those 10 years of love, I had destroyed the last thing Grandpa left me. I took one final look at the watch on Jonah's wrist, clenched my fists, and turned away. Ivy watched me walk away, but only for a second before turning back to console Jonah. Rebecca's car was parked not far from the Carlton residence. When I climbed in, she gasped, reaching out to touch my cheek, but I pushed her away. Let's go. I don't want to stay here for another second. Her brows furrowed. She glanced at the Carlton residence, fury flashing in her eyes, then nodded and drove straight to the airport. By the time we landed in Hawthorne, it was already nighttime. I received 3 text messages from Ivy, all sent that afternoon. I really don't understand why you have to be so unreasonable. What do you gain from humiliating me in front of my family? You're lucky John already forgave you. Let's just put this behind us. We're boarding the flight now. See you in Staravia tomorrow. It's just a bracelet and a watch. I'll buy you 10 new ones tomorrow, alright? I read each text calmly. With a light tap of my finger, I blocked her on every platform. Then, I returned the entire marriage settlement to the Carltons. Chapter 6. The flight from the city to Hawthorne was quiet. Rebecca didn't ask questions. She just drove, her hand steady on the wheel, her presence a silent, solid anchor in the storm raging inside me. When we arrived at Grandpa's courtyard, the air smelled of damp earth and jasmine. The bougainvillea Rebecca had mentioned was indeed in full bloom, a cascading waterfall of magenta over the weathered stone walls. It was beautiful. It was home. Theo, Rebecca said softly as we stood in the moonlight. Are you sure? I looked at the old house, at the porch swing where Grandpa used to sit, at the garden where I had once dreamed of marrying Ivy. I've never been more sure, I said. Thank you for coming to get me, Becca. I know you had work. Work can wait, she said, her eyes searching mine. You can't. I smiled, a genuine, albeit tired, smile. Rebecca Stinton. The girl who lived next door to Grandpa. The girl who used to help me weed the garden when Ivy was too busy visiting the city. The girl who had built a successful landscape architecture firm from scratch while I was busy being Ivy's accessory. I have something to ask you, I said, my heart pounding in a different way now. Not with anxiety, but with a strange, terrifying hope. Rebecca tilted her head. What? I took a deep breath. Do you still have that ring? The one you jokingly made out of grass when we were 12? Rebecca laughed, a clear, bright sound that chased away the shadows of the Carlton mansion. I upgraded it, Theo. A long time ago. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant band of white gold, engraved with a sprig of bougainvillea. I made this 3 years ago, she confessed, her cheeks flushing. When you got engaged to Ivy. I thought I'd need to bury my feelings. So I put them in this ring and hid it away. Becca, I whispered. But then you called me today, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You said you were coming home. You said you were done. I am, I said. I took the ring box from her hand. I knelt on the stone path, under the flowers Grandpa loved. Rebecca Stinton, I said. I have nothing left of my grandfather's fortune. I returned the settlement. The Sterling family business is hanging by a thread. I am not a prize. But I am free. And I am home. Will you marry me? Tears welled in her eyes. Yes, you idiot. Yes. I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Chapter 7. The next morning, my phone, which I had unblocked only for business calls, exploded. Not from Ivy. From the wedding planner. From Chase. From random guests. Mr. Sterling, where are you? The ceremony starts in 2 hours. Theo, people are arriving at the castle. Why isn't your suit here? Is this a prank? The groom is missing? I turned the phone off. At the exact moment Ivy was supposed to be walking down the aisle in Staravia, I was standing in Grandpa's courtyard in a simple linen suit. Rebecca wore a white sundress she had bought at a local boutique that morning. The officiant was the village mayor, an old friend of Grandpa's. The witnesses were Rebecca's parents and the neighbors who had watched me grow up. It wasn't a castle. There were no petals falling from the ceiling. There were no reporters. Just sunlight, flowers, and peace. I do, I said. I do, Rebecca said. We kissed, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I could breathe. Meanwhile, in Staravia, the castle was magnificent. Ivy had spared no expense. The flowers alone cost more than my grandfather's house. Ivy stood in the bridal suite, adjusting her veil. She looked stunning, but there was a frown marring her face. Where is he? She snapped at Chase. Chase wiped sweat from his forehead. Ms. Carlton, we can't find him. His phone is off. The airline confirms he never checked in for the flight. He's throwing a tantrum, Ivy scoffed. He probably took a later flight to make a point. He wants me to worry. Jonah sat on the velvet sofa, playing with the watch on his wrist, my grandfather's watch. Maybe he got cold feet? Or maybe he's jealous because the castle was my idea. He has no right to be jealous, Ivy said, checking her reflection. He should be grateful. I'm marrying him despite his family's pathetic financial state. The minutes ticked by. The guests were seated. The orchestra had played the prelude 3 times. Finally, Ivy's father stormed into the suite. Ivy. It's been an hour. The guests are whispering. Where is Theo? He's coming. Ivy shouted. He has to come. He loves me. He's obsessed with me. Chase's phone pinged. He looked at it, and his face went white. Ms. Carlton. What? You need to see this. Chase held up his tablet. It was a live stream. Not from a news outlet, but from a personal account. Rebecca's account. It showed a sunny courtyard. It showed me, laughing, with cake frosting on my nose. It showed Rebecca, radiant in white, holding my hand. And it showed our hands, with matching wedding bands. The caption read, married my best friend in the place we both love. No castles needed. Just us. Ivy stared at the screen. Her brain refused to process the image. That's Theo, she whispered. He got married, Chase said, his voice hushed. To Rebecca Stinton. This morning. No, Ivy said, shaking her head. That's fake. That's AI. He's trying to scare me. She grabbed her phone and dialed my number. Straight to voicemail. She dialed again. And again. Then she saw the email notification. Subject, termination of engagement and return of assets. She opened it. It was a legal document, drafted by my lawyer yesterday. It detailed the return of the dowry, the cancellation of the prenup, and a formal statement that the wedding was off. Attached was a personal note. Ivy. You chose the venue. You chose the suit. You chose the watch. You chose Jonah. So I chose myself. Goodbye. Ivy dropped the phone. It cracked on the marble floor. He left me, she screamed, the sound echoing through the castle walls. He left me? For her? A gardener? Jonah stood up, looking nervous. Vivi, maybe we should tell the guests to go home? Ivy whirled on him. Her eyes were wild. Go home? I have 500 people out there. I have the press. I can't be left at the altar. I am Ivy Carlton. She looked at Jonah. She looked at his suit, the one he was wearing, which was identical to the groom's suit I was supposed to wear. A twisted idea formed in her mind. John, she said, her voice dangerously sweet. You love me, right? Jonah blinked. Of course, Vivi. You're my best friend. You said you'd do anything for me. Yes. Marry me, she commanded. Jonah choked. What? Marry me. Right now. Walk down that aisle and marry me. We'll tell everyone Theo got sick or died, or, I don't care. We'll say we realized we were in love all along. It's a better story anyway. Childhood friends. It's romantic. Jonah backed away. Vivi, that's insane. I can't marry you. I'm gay, Vivi. The silence in the room was absolute. Ivy stared at him. What? I'm gay, Jonah repeated, his voice small. I've been trying to tell you for years. That's why I broke up with my ex. That's why I spent so much time with you, because you were safe. You were like a sister. Ivy's mouth opened and closed. But everyone says we're a couple. You let them say it. Because it was easier than coming out to my conservative parents. Jonah cried. And you loved the attention. You loved having a lapdog. But I can't marry you. Ivy looked around the room. Her father looked furious. Her mother looked faint. Chase was live tweeting the meltdown on his burner account. She was alone. In a castle. In a wedding dress. She started to laugh. It was a high, shrill sound that bordered on hysteria. Get out, she whispered. Vivi. Get out, she shrieked, grabbing a vase and hurling it at Jonah. It smashed against the wall next to his head. Jonah ran. Chapter 8. The fallout was spectacular. The headlines wrote themselves. Carlton heiress jilted for gardener. The wedding that wasn't. Sterling heir chooses love over money. My grandfather's courtyard became famous overnight, but Rebecca and I kept the gates closed. We didn't want fame. We wanted peace. I took over the Sterling business. It was hard. We were on the brink of bankruptcy, just as Ivy had said. But I wasn't alone anymore. Rebecca had a brilliant mind for strategy. We pivoted. We sold off the unprofitable luxury assets and focused on what the Sterling family used to be known for, artisan craftsmanship and sustainable agriculture. We turned Grandpa's land into a high-end organic vineyard and botanical garden. It took 3 years of grueling work, but we turned a profit. Ivy didn't fare as well. The humiliation broke something in her. She became obsessed with destroying me. She tried to buy out our suppliers. She tried to sue me for emotional distress. She launched a smear campaign in the tabloids. But every time she attacked, she just looked more bitter, more desperate. Jonah disappeared. Rumor had it he moved to Europe to study art and finally live his truth away from the toxic orbit of the Carltons. I hoped he was happy. I didn't hate him anymore. I pitied him. 3 years later, Rebecca and I were sitting on the porch swing. She was pregnant with our first child. You have a visitor, Rebecca said, nodding toward the gate. I looked up. A black limousine was parked outside. Ivy stepped out. She looked different. Harder. Thinner. Her eyes were cold. I walked to the gate. I didn't open it. Ivy, I said. Theo, she replied. She looked at the house, at the blooming garden, at Rebecca's pregnant belly visible from the porch. A flicker of pain crossed her face, but she masked it quickly. I came to give you something, she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a watch. Grandpa's watch. It was battered. The strap was worn. But it was the watch. Jonah sent it back to me, she said. He had the modifications removed. As best he could. She passed it through the bars of the gate. I took it. I ran my thumb over the familiar engraving. Why are you here, Ivy? My father is dying, she said abruptly. The Carlton Corporation is struggling. The board wants to oust me. They say I'm too volatile. I'm sorry to hear that. I need a partner, she said. Someone they trust. Someone stable. She looked at me with that old, confident gaze. The one that used to make me melt. Come back, Theo. I can forgive you. We can merge the companies. You can save the Carltons, and I can make you richer than you ever dreamed. You don't belong here, in the dirt. You belong in the sky. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel regret. I just felt nothing. She was a stranger. A ghost from a life I didn't want. I am rich, I said softly. I looked back at the porch. Rebecca waved. I have everything I ever wanted, Ivy. And none of it costs a thing. Ivy's face crumbled. For a second, just a second, the mask fell, and I saw the lonely, terrified girl underneath. But I chose the castle for us, she whispered. You chose the castle for you, I corrected her gently. I just wanted a home. I turned around and walked back to the house. I heard the limousine door slam. I heard the engine roar away. I sat down on the swing next to my wife. I put the watch on my wrist. It ticked, steady and true. What did she want? Rebecca asked, resting her head on my shoulder. She wanted to sell me a dream, I said, kissing her forehead. And I told her I was already awake. The end.